All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that I think a lot of Home Assistant users will find pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and that is how to create a Jarvis-like experience in your setup.
Okay.
And by
Oh.
Jarvis-like, I'm not just talking about voice commands here.
Right.
I'm talking about a system that understands your routines, your preferences, that can anticipate your needs.
That's really the ultimate goal, isn't
That's
it?
what we're aiming for. And the cool thing is, we got some really interesting source material today from a Home Assistant enthusiast who's been experimenting with building this kind of setup. And they've shared some really fascinating insights into how to move past those basic automations, the ones we all start with, and create something much more intuitive and integrated. And the big question that we really want to explore today is this. What makes a smart home feel like it's working with you,
Yeah.
not just for you?
That's the key, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So I think a good starting point is to revisit those three core elements of a Jarvis-like system. Do you remember what those are?
Oh, let's see. If I remember correctly, it was reading, reasoning, and responding, right?
Exactly. Reading or understanding context,
Yep.
reasoning it or making decisions based on that context,
Yeah.
and then responding,
Right.
taking action.
Makes sense.
So today, we're going to be diving extra deep into that responding aspect,
Okay.
really focusing on what that user experience feels like.
Gotcha.
And one thing that's really interesting is that people often get so caught up in those flashy features of a Jarvis system.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
They think about the snarky personality, the voice control, all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
But our source today makes a really important point.
What's that?
A truly helpful Jarvis-like system, it's not really about those bells and whistles.
Yeah.
It's built on a deep understanding of your individual needs and habits.
It makes sense when you think about it that way.
It does. And they even go as far as to challenge us to think
Oh.
about whether our current lifestyles even support that kind of Jarvis functionality that we're all dreaming of.
That's interesting. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, let's say you're not someone who regularly uses to-do lists,
Okay.
just not part of your routine.
Yeah.
Having Jarvis manage your to-dos,
Right.
it's not suddenly going to make you super organized.
Because you're not already doing it.
Exactly. It all comes back to that idea of making things easier, right?
It's like those smart home heuristics we talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those rules of thumb for good smart home design.
Yep. One of the key ones is that automations, they should be reducing your effort,
Yeah,
not just shifting it around.
totally. So every single automation that's part of that Jarvis system that you're building,
Yeah.
it needs to follow those heuristics. That's what creates that seamless experience.
I'm starting to see how all of this ties together.
So we're talking about Jarvis as a collection of automations,
Right. Right.
but it's not just a bunch of random automations.
Right. Of course not.
It's like a web. They're all interconnected, working together seamlessly.
It's like a system of systems.
It is. And the source gave this great example. Even something as simple as turning on the lights
Yeah.
could actually involve multiple automations happening in the background.
Like what?
They talked about location tracking.
Okay, so knowing where you are in the house.
Right. And then path prediction.
So like anticipating where you're going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe even a voice prompt to confirm.
Wow, that's pretty advanced for just turning on a light.
Right. And it all happens without you even having to think about it.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. And it's so different from just shouting across the room.
Yeah, like Jarvis lights.
Exactly. This is much more subtle. It blends into how you're already living.
Makes the house feel truly smart.
And that brings us to another really important point.
Okay.
When it comes to building a Jarvis-like system, there's no one-size-fits-all solution
I can see that. Yeah.
because it's all about your individual needs, your habits. Everyone's Jarvis is going to be completely unique.
So basically, you can create a Jarvis that's perfectly tailored to you.
Exactly. Even if it looks totally different from someone else's. And I think that's a really empowering idea.
It is.
And that actually leads to a great question for our listeners to think about. What are those core functions that you would want your Jarvis to handle
Yeah,
based on your specific needs?
that's a good one.
But here's the thing. Even with all this amazing potential we've been talking about,
Yeah,
there's still a big challenge we need to address.
it's that.
How do we actually bridge the gap between the AI's intelligence
Okay.
and the real-world actions that our devices can perform?
Right. There's still that limitation of what our technology can actually do.
Exactly. And the author actually dives headfirst into this challenge.
Oh, they do.
They even shared how they managed to get their system to control robot vacuums.
No way.
Yeah, like scheduling, cleaning, and everything, without explicitly programming it.
Wait, hold on. How is that even possible? I thought we were talking about Home Assistant, not some futuristic sci-fi movie.
I know, right? It really makes you think about how much control we can actually delegate to an AI system and what's truly achievable when we approach it the right way.
Okay, but seriously, how did they manage to control those robot vacuums without writing any code? What's the secret sauce?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. They combined a text-based repository, like Obsidian, with AI. It creates this dynamic learning system that's incredibly customizable.
So instead of pre-programmed responses, the AI is actually learning and adapting based on what it finds in this repository.
Exactly. Think of Obsidian as this place where you can write down all your preferences, but you're doing it in plain English.
Hmm.
The AI can actually understand these notes and use them to make decisions. No complex coding needed.
That's incredible.
So it's not just blindly following commands. It's actually understanding your preferences and making choices based on them.
It's a whole new level of intelligence. And this approach moves us away from those rigid, pre-programmed models and towards a system that can actually evolve with your needs. It becomes a true partner in creating that perfect home environment.
But what makes this learning AI system actually tick? What are the key elements that allow it to work so well?
Well, the author highlights three crucial aspects. Firstly, there's observability. You need to be able to see how your Jarvis is thinking and making decisions.
Makes sense. You don't want a black box running your home. You need to understand the why behind the actions.
Exactly. And then there's flexibility. It should be super easy to adjust preferences and behaviors without having to disrupt the entire system.
Right. You don't want to have to reprogram everything just to make a small tweak.
Right.
What's the third element?
The third key element is meaningful interaction. The way you interact with your Jarvis should feel completely natural and intuitive to you.
So it's not just about voice commands. It's
Yeah.
about finding that perfect way to communicate with your smart home, whatever that looks like for you.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between automation and control.
Okay, so let's talk about this whole text-based repository idea
Okay.
using something like Obsidian. Can you break that down for us a little more? Like what is it and why is it useful for this?
Sure. So, you know how in Home Assistant you're already working with automations and configurations or
Yeah, we all have those YAML files and stuff.
Exactly. Well, Obsidian, it's basically a really sophisticated note-taking app.
Okay.
But the cool thing is you can store information in a way that the AI can actually understand.
So instead of writing, complex code to define every single rule and preference,
Right.
you're basically creating a knowledge base,
Mm-hmm.
but it's in plain English.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're writing notes, but the AI can read those notes and learn from them.
That sounds a lot easier than learning a whole new programming language.
Yeah. Way easier. And you know what's really cool? You can just edit these text files in Obsidian and the AI automatically adjusts its actions. No messing around with lines of code.
That's pretty slick.
Mm-hmm.
But how does the AI actually connect to Obsidian?
Good question. There are actually a few different ways to do it. Some folks in the Home Assistant community have been using plugins or custom components
Okay.
specifically designed to bridge that gap between Home Assistant and Obsidian.
So it sounds like it's still kind of a new frontier, right?
Yeah, it is. There are different people experimenting with different solutions and figuring out what works best.
That's what I love about the Home Assistant community, though.
Right.
There's so much innovation happening all the time.
It's really exciting to be a part of it. And going back to what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
with the source material, they really emphasize the importance of observability.
Right. Being able to see how the AI is actually making decisions.
Exactly. Because if you can't see how it's working, how can you trust it, right?
Absolutely. You don't want your smart home operating in a black box, making decisions you don't understand.
Nope. You want to be able to see the logic behind its actions and make sure they align with what you want.
And that's one of the big advantages of this text-based repository approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because everything is laid out in plain text. You can actually read those files and see how the AI is thinking.
Right. It's like having a window into the AI's mind. You can trace its thought process and make adjustments as needed.
So if the system starts doing something, unexpected or strange,
Yeah.
you can go back and figure out why it made that decision.
Exactly. It's a much more transparent way to work with AI.
I feel like that level of transparency is going to become even more important as we start trusting these AI systems with more complex tasks,
Mm.
things that could potentially have a bigger impact on our lives.
Oh, absolutely. If you're going to let the AI control, things like your home security or manage your energy consumption, you really need to be confident that it's working with you, not against you.
And that ties into the concept of flexibility too, right?
Totally. Because if you can see how the AI is working, it becomes much easier to tweak things and customize its behavior as your needs change.
So we've talked about observability and flexibility.
Right.
But let's circle back to that third key element you mentioned earlier, meaningful interaction.
Right.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, the source didn't go into specifics about like particular interaction methods, but they stress that it's all about finding what works best for you personally.
So it could be voice control, touch screens, gestures.
Yeah, anything really. It's about having that natural, intuitive way to communicate with your smart home.
And I guess that ties back to the whole idea that there's no one-size-fits-all solution here.
Exactly. Everyone's going to have their own preferences, and what feels meaningful to one person might not feel meaningful to another.
It seems like this whole concept of building a learning AI system is really well suited to the Home Assistant environment specifically.
I think so too. Because, we already have such a powerful platform
Uh-huh.
that allows for so much customization and integration.
We're all used to tinkering and experimenting with our setups.
Right. So this is like taking it to the next level.
And for everyone listening
Yeah.
who's on their own Home Assistant journey,
Uh-huh.
we encourage you to keep experimenting, keep exploring.
Yeah, don't be afraid to try new things.
Our smart homes are not just convenient and efficient,
Right.
but also ethical, empowering,
Uh-huh.
and truly aligned with our values.
Well said. It's been a pleasure diving deep with you today.
It has been great. And to our listeners, we'll leave you with this final thought. As you continue to explore all the amazing possibilities of Home Assistant, remember this: the quest for a Jarvis-like smart home, it's not just about replicating some cool movie concept. It's about creating a home that reflects who you are, that enhances your well-being, that empowers you to live a richer and more fulfilling life. So keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, happy automating.